With that said, we are so honored to have Jim Satterfield present. He is one of the founders and owners of Crisis Risk, and I'll let him take it away.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks everybody for joining us today. And we're going to be talking about crisis communications and your role as an elected official or supporting them through this process, because we're seeing an increase in crisis events impacting local governments around the country. We did a survey, which I'll share in a little while with you to give you some ideas about it. But I'd like you to look at this picture and think about what it would be like if you're going into your location and you see these people outside. What's your first thought? And it's probably expletive deleted that something's going wrong. And what are they going on? What do I need to do? How do we need to address it? And we're going to talk about that today. Here's our agenda. I'll share the survey that I referenced a few minutes ago. We'll talk about the crisis environment and the terminology associated with it. Then we'll go through some crisis traps, some tips, and we'll explain the crisis ABCs. It's a way for you to evaluate the severity of the event that you're involved. We'll focus on the decisions, actions, and words that are needed. We'll also look at some tools that are available to you under the Crisis Coach program with trainings and certifications and a variety of things. And unfortunately, they don't cost you any money. This is a service that comes through the insurance programs that are available to all of you. So I would encourage you to take full advantage of it. And then I'm going to walk through quickly a test exercise to think about, could this be happening and what would we be doing in my county or my town to deal with those issues. So we've got a lot to think about. So let's get started. This is a survey that we did about 2 weeks ago. It was across the country and related to organizations. Are you concerned that the election will affect the level of violence in your organization or community? And 70% of the people said, yes, we're concerned about that, which I found to be a very staggeringly large number. And as we thought about it, we then did a follow-up question. What have you surveyed the concerns, and what have you looked at this? Have you done something to improve it? And 80% said no. So 70% said they had a problem. They really haven't focused on their stakeholders to see what their specific concerns were to deal with it. And they did ask a little bit about what actions would you take, and you see the ones listed here: adding security, coordination with law enforcement, and increasing police presence. Those aspects of it are going to impact the local governments because of those issues that are happening. And you can't turn on the television or see any stories today where the election is not the main piece of news that's coming out across those things. So let's think about public entities events. Everything you see listed here are events that we've dealt with in the last year and a half or 2 years. And you'll see lots of shootings, voter suppression, abuse of power, standoff associated with it. That's the environment. And down at the bottom, we're going to talk a lot more about that sentence at the bottom of the page that says, crisis is defined by loss of control, because that's the key element here, getting back in control in these situations. So it begins like those dandelions in your yard. Once you have one dandelion, you don't have to worry. You're going to have lots of them spread everywhere across your property. But crisis is not business as usual, it's business unusual. That's a point to make, because people are good at what they do day in and day out. If you're issuing tags, you're great at issuing tags. If you're trying to coordinate utilities or whatever is involved, you've got a procedure and a process to do that. But once it becomes business unusual, that changes the side from every aspect. So crisis is a state of being just characterized by loss of control and extensive negative stakeholder reaction. And so we're going to focus on that stakeholder reaction, because those are going to be the things that we're going to need to address within it. So the crisis environment is unpredictable. It's going to take advantage of any structure that's not in place. Consequences are going to accelerate rapidly. Command and control is lost. There'll be hostile agents there. Everybody has their own agenda. Their goal is to create disruption And you're going to find that into where leadership is forced into a reactionary mode at every step along the way. Some common terms to think about. The first thing we want to do is we've got a responsibility to protect our critical assets, our people, our infrastructure, our brand and reputation. That's one of the concerns that you have as an elected official. Then the threats that come, threats are come there to any person that could, the potential to harm those assets. And it could be caused by a vulnerability. A vulnerability is a weakness or a gap. If you'd seen it before, you would have had a plan. You haven't seen it before. Now you see those elements. And we see this a lot, and gave a cyber example of there where they clicked on the wrong thing or sent the money to the wrong location. So a risk then is damage of a critical asset by a vulnerability and exploited by the threat. That's really what we're focusing on when we talk about a crisis and trying to manage those particular elements. So the event is one so that has now occurred. Damage is there. And a lot of times we're working pre-event. We'll also talk about the concept of imminent, where there's some circumstance that's occurred. It's not yet a crisis. Can we intervene and stop it from occurring? And then we have the event, and the hurricanes of the recent weeks are great examples of how those can come through and make up a difference. And it probably, you lived for a few days without power. I know we experienced 4 days without power. So a disastrous event with serious disruption for a short or long period, and the hurricane is the prime example of it. And an emergency is a situation or event that requires an immediate response. The building's on fire. We're going to evacuate. We're going to deal with it. But what's the line between an emergency and a crisis? Now, we've already gone through this definition of a crisis. It's a loss of control combined with extensive negative stakeholder reaction. So this example between an emergency and a crisis shows that we've got a building on fire. There are people inside. Immediate actions required to prevent harm, both to your critical assets and your people. And looking at that, you've got the fire department puts the fire out. Is it a crisis? No, it's an emergency. However, if after the fire we learned that the reports that the alarms were faulty, that the victim's employees learned of this and became angry, blaming leadership, media investigations, regulators are coming in and focus on it. Lawyers are coming. No good deed goes unpunished when you add lawyers. Leadership does not know what to do or say. Is now we up to a crisis? And clearly we've now escalated to a crisis. So we want to deal with these assets and vulnerabilities and threats ahead of time to start to look at those. Well, where are the traps? When was the last time a surprise was good? I tell everybody the last time a surprise was good for me, I was 5 years old, and it was my birthday. If it comes as a surprise, it's generally not going to be good. Most of the information you learn initially in a crisis is wrong. We didn't know anything about it. We didn't do anything wrong. It will turn that, yeah, you did. Somebody knew. Yeah, you did something wrong. Facts are going to change. And I'm going to repeat the next line down multiple times to the rest of our presentation. If you're explaining, you're losing. Now, a lot of times you've got people who love a microphone and they want to get up there and get started talking, talk to the television camera, and they're trying to explain what occurred or what's from that standpoint. If you're explaining, you're talking about what the problem is, not what is the solution. We want to focus on the solution and not the cause at this point. And so if you can help the other elected officials and the leadership within your organization to move on to talk about what the solution is as opposed to what the causation was, it will make a big difference. Another big trap is the media. The media is not your friend. The number of times that we speak and say, well, I know the guy that runs the local radio station, or I know the guy that has the newspaper. You know, they're going to be our friends. And the answer is not. And then suddenly when you start getting contacted by media outside of your area, WSB calls you up and you're in Albany. Wait a minute, I don't think WSB's shown in Albany. But so they're looking for a story, and they will use this exact line on the right side of your screen. If we don't hear from you by 3 o'clock today, we'll publish and go with the story that we have. That's a threat that's universally made, and just ignore it. You want to make sure the people are trained that if you get a contact from the media, that they know that they're not to be talking to them and not to commit that you're going to be talking to them. Our recommendation is you train the staff as the call comes in, thank the reporter for contacting, get their name, get their affiliation, get their contact information, and state, and I will pass it on, not that they will call you back. Then we know who to start monitoring, seeing what they're going with on the story to get a much better understanding of where we are in this process. Press conferences are a trap. The media is looking for angry people standing up and screaming, and they're going to be moving in that direction and always trying to leverage that. We'll talk about town hall meetings, but a town hall meeting at that point, people can express their opinion. It's not a Q&A session, but a press conference early in a crisis is always a mistake because it's going to support the people that are in opposition to you. The need for an investigation. You do need to do an investigation if you've had, for example, an excessive use of force, that we've seen in the media a lot over the last several years. And so you can't investigate yourself. I use an example. The IRS doesn't allow you to do a self-audit. Hey, I did my taxes. I audited myself. I only owe this money. Give me my full refund. So having an external investigation is good. If it's a law enforcement involvement or an issue, having the GBI, I'm a big fan of the GBI. They'll come in. It's an independent investigation, and they can come back. If they decline to investigate, that is actually good. It's just there's not anything here to talk about. And while the investigation is going on, that gives you a quiet time, and you refer any reporter that contacts you back to whoever this has been referred to handle. It's going to make that difference. Now, I alluded to the mic and why that's a danger. By the way, the mic's always on. It's never off. And yes, they're going to use anything you say at that point in time. So just resist the mic and do not push forward to talk. Interpersonal conflict, if there's some hostility within your organization, this guy doesn't like that guy, or this department doesn't like that department, those are just going to be intensified in a crisis and could be a source of negative information moving out into the public domain. So you need to be aware of that, and because that will exacerbate this particular crisis. Town hall meetings. I know we were talking about press conferences a little while ago, but town hall meetings are very dangerous. If you don't have procedures for the town hall meetings in your area, I recommend that you give preference to local residents first. So when someone comes to, they want to speak, they sign in, so you've got an address. If you have enough time to deal with people who are not from your area, they could be added at the end, but announcing first, we're going to allot 45 minutes for this portion of it, and we're going to let the residents go in order and move through. If they do it, they're to present information, and you're not to be responding back to them. It's not a back and forth. It is where they present and you move on to the other area. That's going to make a difference. By the way, the media with cameras will be there, trained to see those people standing up, shouting, waving their arms, and creating that television moment. Now, responding is not always necessary. Social media has expanded greatly through the years now, but just because there's a comment out there, you don't have to respond to it, whether it's a Facebook or it's an email or it's a telephone call. Keep a log of those people, and part of your role will be to make sure that somebody's monitoring what's being said on social media. What are the areas that we need to focus on? So in today's environment, we're going to get news all through the situations that we've just talked about. A controversial story will become a headline, and they're using it to sell advertising. Walter Cronkite died years and years and years ago. The media is in a different environment. It's about viewers and selling advertisement, and if it bleeds, it leads. That's going to be the direction they're looking for. Now, every crisis is a human crisis, so it's about the people that live in your area. It's about the people that you work with. And so that's going to be the element that is going to become most important. We've got to identify who our stakeholders are, and that will help us design what we're doing. Now, the easiest way to start about this is to focus on what are the decisions that you need to make, what are the actions that you need to take, and what are the words that you need to say. And you'll notice that we start with decisions. We're not running out doing a bunch of stuff. We're not running out saying a bunch of things. We've got to figure out what do we need to focus on? What decisions do we need to make in each of these areas? Now, in any crisis, questions are going to start coming at you from a variety of things. What occurred? What's known? What's going to happen next? What are you concerned about? What is the plan? What should we monitor? What are the metrics? How do we know if we're doing good or bad? What are the 3 key messages? And we'll give you details on that in just a few minutes. Who is the spokesperson? Have they had training to deal with this? It's like you don't want to break a rookie into the Super Bowl. The crisis becomes your Super Bowl. What are the threats, risks, and vulnerabilities that you're facing? Who are the internal and external stakeholders? What are their agendas? Is engagement by legal counsel needed? And let me answer that for you. The answer is yes, because we're looking to try to create attorney-client privilege. And so those emails can be discovered. Those messages can come forward. So pulling that together, and that's one of the advantages that you have from the insurance pools in Georgia, because they have counsel already identified that can be helpful to go with your county or city attorney that's involved. And what's our records retention policy around it? So these are all questions that need to be dealt with very early into the process as you're moving through and handling the crisis. Now, these are the crisis ABCs. You may have heard those in some of the training that we've had available, but it's a way to compare one crisis to another, and I'll show you that graphically in a minute. The A's stand for angry. Are people angry? What are they angry about? Blame. What are they blaming us for? And concern. Anger and blame look to the past. Concern looks to the future. And then we measure those reactions by looking at the extent. We look at the spread, the speed, the setting, the number of people that are going to do it, the velocity rate that this is going, the setting. You know, are you the lead story in the Penny Saver, or are you the lead story on CNN? 2 different levels. If it involves 10 people or 10,000 people, those are the elements that we look at. So graphically, we can plot the anger and blame concern versus the speed, spread, and setting. And it gives us a way to see where our crisis is. If it's down there in the green area, we call that guarded, and our goal there is to monitor what's happening. It's still low risk to us. It's in that yellow band in between. It's elevated, and we really then have to manage our response that's going on. It's in the red up at the top right. Now it's a severe one. We've got to mitigate impacts. So it tells us the level of the response and gives us some details in the direction that we would go. So we've got to see this early on, and it gives us a way to compare one crisis to another. And there are tools and the materials that are available to you that allow you to plot this and pass that information on so that everyone on your team is on the same page at the same time. Now, I've used the term decisions, actions, and words a bunch getting up to this point. We've got to base our decisions on facts, not opinions. It's got to be clearly, we know this, here's a fact, the dam broke. Those are facts. Actions are required to establish command and control of a crisis. Now, that's a slightly different tone than what you might have thought. Actions aren't immediately trying to put the dam back together. It's how do we get back in command and control of this situation? And so those are the actions that we're taking, because once we're back in control, we are no longer in a crisis according to our definition and direction. And then words really matter. If you're explaining you're losing, I told you you'd see those words again. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking specifically about communications. And that's the backbone of today's web meeting as we're going through it. So clarifying that, don't try to explain away what you can't make it not have happened. So we're not going to waste any time on it. Proper wording and timing is essential. How do we describe the people? How do we describe the event? What terms do we want to do? And it must respond to the questions and concerns that the stakeholders have. Now, if you look at it, there's a rule that we have that helps on should we be communicating right now, and it's the rule of 5. If someone comes to you and says, we need to get a statement out of this, your first question should be, why? And I will tell you, they'll give you an answer and it'll be pretty good. Then you ask again, why? They'll be a little taken aback and they'll give you another answer. It won't be quite as good as the first, but it'll have some good points. And then you ask, why? And they'll start to fumble and they may have something. But by the time you hit the 4th why, they're going to go, I don't know. And clearly, by the time you get to the 5th why, they can't come up with a reason why we need to communicate right now. And that gives you the chance to take a deep breath and make sure we have everything in order. By the way, if you ask why 5 times and they give you 5 great answers, then you're going to need to communicate right now. That pretty much clearly puts you into that area. But if you use this little rule of 5, it will help you when people are just with their hairs on fire and they're running around trying to make something happen. You'll be able to get back in control as you're helping them deal with the issues. Now, when we talk about communications, we can prepare a lot of this in advance. And I'm going to give you a tip in just a minute about home bases. But there are two types of things. Home bases are the basic statements that we're going to make regardless of any event. And message maps then become responding to a particular risk or exposure aspect of it as we move through. So home bases are well thought out in advance, and they come back and say what defines you as an organization. You've got a mission statement for your county or your city. What defines you? Why are you here? We want to be the safest community in the state of Georgia. We want to provide an environment where our children can grow up in. Whatever that mission statement is. By the way, if you don't have a mission statement, you need to create one, and that should be posted on the website or your Facebook page for the county or the city, so that you can point to that. And I'll go over this again in a minute, but the first answer you're going to give is, this is what defines us. And then the second, as you're going to see in a minute, is that we're committed to continuous improvement. We're going to make sure this doesn't happen again. And your last statement is going to focus on the people that were impacted. But having a home base, telling us what your entity is defined by, will be an important thing to have in your pocket. So the umpire that's out here, there's summer balls and summer strikes, but they ain't nothing till I call them. So what defines your organization? The mission, the vision, and goals. I was surprised. I've been working with the pools in Georgia for close to 10 years now, and we still have a lot that haven't done that definition. So I would recommend that would be good use of time of saying, what defines us? What defines, we want to be a community that grows or supports its people. Whatever that statement is, that gives you your first answer in what defines your organization. We'll invent the future. That means we're not talking about the problem. We're going to make sure that the future is correct, and we're committed to continuous improvement, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that this will never happen again. And then the last is that our hearts go out to those that are involved. We want to embrace them. This is the time for us to do that. You'll notice I didn't explain anything about what occurred. It gets us off of that and talking about the solution and not the problem. And that's got to be key to everything we do from a communication standpoint. Now, if you're concerned about certain things, you can think about them in advance, list the questions. What is it impacting? What's your first key message, your second, your third on that topic? How do you want it communicated? Do you want it posted? Do you want it verbal? And so if you develop these message maps, then somebody who is under stress of a crisis occurring can go there and immediately answer those questions. By the way, one insight with this approach is if there are 3 that are listed, you give the first answer and then you shut up. If there's a follow-up question on that topic, then you give the second and shut up. And if there's a third, you give the third answer at that point in time. You don't shoot them all at once. You use those as ammunition to fight. At the end of that, you go back to your home bases and move from those elements. But it's worthwhile thinking about these in advance, and what have you experienced in the past, or what are you seeing others go through would certainly help you. The media is always looking for something controversial. We've seen statements made from people that you would go, oh, I wish they'd not said that, and they did, in fact. So, it's much better to go with those home bases than say no comment. No comment is interpreted in the media today as we're guilty, we know it, we did it, and we just aren't talking about it. So having those things in place gives you that. So if you must talk to the media, use the home bases and message maps. No comment can be, instead of saying that, say, as I'm sure you can appreciate, we don't have all the facts yet. As soon as we do, we'll be communicating with you about that. Tell them what you want them to hear. What I can tell you, if there's something that only three people were impacted, by the word only is bad. Only state facts. Do not give us opinions or statements here. I don't think this happened. Are not things. It's going to open up. And if you say something that's wrong, the media is going to come back, and their goal is to make you eat those words. So avoid those. Continue to monitor the stakeholder reaction and extent. Going back to that chart we created with anger, blame, and concern. What are they angry about? What are they blaming us for? What is their concern? And see if it's increasing or decreasing. So you can measure this significantly all the way through. What do you prioritize in a crisis? About people. If it's anything to do with people, that's your number one priority. We can fix whatever else it is, but if we have a loss of life and we've had things that have happened, that's going to be our first concern. Do that independent investigation, and where possible, have it by a third party so there can be no allegations of a cover-up. Get legal and counsel involved as early as you can. If you don't know who to call GMA, call ACCG, call LGMRS, call them. They'll put you in touch with, because that's going to become very, very critical. And monitor social media. There are tools that you can set up that there could be regular searches conducted saying, here's what they're saying about what's going on. So to summarize these, believe that what you learn is true and consider it as true until you learn it's not. Now, I've told you that most about what you've learned initially in a crisis is wrong, but if you believe that what you've heard is true, we have to operate on that. Intend that any communication, know that it's going to later become publicly available. That's why we're concerned about sending out emails, putting them things in writing. There's going to be anger and blame and concern. Appreciate that it's escalation is going to occur. What decision can we do to make a change? What actions can we have? What words? I worked with a county government. They'd had an event in Georgia that was occurring, and they found that they were the lead story in another state over 1,000 miles away, and we don't care, because that's not our stakeholders. It's not our area. We don't need to interchange with them and try to make those elements work through. There can be positive outcomes from this crisis, and that's where we're going to be thinking later about transforming crisis into value. Now, when you think about a crisis, there are 4 different crisis stages, and there's a role to be played in each of these. The first is before. That's where you want to make sure we've got planning, we've got training, that you've sent your people through the certification. I'll tell you about the certification that's available in just a minute. But so 50% of anything in a crisis is in the before and the imminent. The during and after are the other 50%. Normally people are only focused on the during or the after. But you start before to say, do we have a plan? Have we trained our people? Do we have message maps? Are we set to handle all of those things at this point in time? Imminent is we see something that has the potential to escalate. What can we do to mitigate the potential impacts or even prevent it? So this is starting earlier within it. If you think about, we're in football season, before it's all the practice, the game planning, the training. Imminent is you see, wait a minute, that guy went in motion. They could be trying to do something, so you can respond to what you need to do there. The during is it's going on right now. We've got resources and tools that can help you prioritize the decisions, actions, and words. And remember, our goal here is not to stop it from happening, not anything else, but to be back in control, to focus on the decisions, actions, and words that will help us be back in control. And then after, how do we return to a new normal after a crisis, because it'll never be the same. There are a couple of tools that you have immediate access to that would be helpful to your organization. One is awareness training. This is a short 10-minute video that you can show to anyone that works within your organization to help them understand some of the potential things here. And this goes back to an old insurance concept called late notice. People were aware of a problem, but they didn't tell the insurance company until after it occurred. So knowing about it, this awareness level, recognizing these behaviors or concerns or situations that can make a difference. And that e-learning module is available, only takes 10 minutes to be accessed over the internet, and anyone in your organization or within your district could certainly take advantage of it. There is a program called a Certified Crisis Coordinator. This is a commitment of an employee within the entity to go more than one. We've got in some areas where the law enforcement has their own and the administration has theirs. Their goal is to recognize that something requires further attention. It's an emerging issue. To identify those that are likely to escalate and then alert leadership that this problem is there. There are about 600 certified crisis coordinators in Georgia as we speak, and it's certainly been a big opportunity because now we've got somebody that's fixing it to make sure that leadership knows that something is about to occur. Now, we've just added a new certified program as a crisis advisor, and that's a step above, and their goal is to understand what occurred, to advise the decisions, actions, and words to leadership, and then support them through it. And we have tools that will help all of it. The Certified Crisis Coordinator takes about 3 hours to take the 12 courses. This program takes a little less than that, and there are 10 courses within it. And again, it's e-learning online, no cost to you. And then finally, we created a tool based upon the experiences in all these areas called a virtual crisis response advisor. And it has a 1, 2, 3 process. Number one, it's going to say, what stage are you in? Before, imminent, during, or after? What crisis are you dealing with? And it could be excessive use of force or some other element. And then it pushes to you control checklists, message maps, decision tools to help deal with the elements that are going to get you back in control. And these are all available 24/7 over the internet to everyone in Georgia. And when Dan sends out the recording link to this, he'll send you a page that gives you QR codes and the other ability to see what those are and enter them. And again, there's no cost to your organization for that. It will start out with a little short 2-minute video on the sites saying that bad things happen. And these are like covered members within an insurance pool, and talk about the Crisis Coach program. So that 1:41 gives you an overview. It's the value proposition will be explained, and we'll talk about the 4 areas that I talked about: awareness, coordinator, advisor, and the VCRA. Give you a short little video explaining them. And then through this, you'll have a link that you can go and take those programs or utilize those tools. It's a way to put you in control with 24/7 access. We also support those with a live hotline. So if there's a problem that occurs, you can pick up the phone, call us, and then we can give you some insights and point you to some of the other tools and resources. So my goal to get to this point was just to give you a framework of all the things that Dan and the leadership have put into place that are available for you. I'm going to mention one thing to draw a conclusion back. And if I said Miranda warning, we've all seen enough police television shows to know you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. But we did a crisis Miranda warning that says you have the right to remain silent. If you don't take away much from our talk today, that's the first one I want you to remember. Number 2, apply anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of public opinion. not the legal court. This is the court of public opinion. That's why you need to be very careful with the media at every step along the way. You have the right to a crisis manager. If the types of things you do every day, you're good at. But if you've not handled a crisis, it's not a good one to start with on-the-job training. And then if you can't afford a crisis manager, crisis risk or firestorm, our firm will provide one for you. And then finally, do you understand the rights I've just read to you? With these rights in mind, would you wish to speak to a crisis coach now? So that's part of the program that we've affiliated together to make those things available to you. Now, I talked to Dan, and Dan and I had a conversation today just before about the election. And I started today's webinar off with the facts from that survey that 70% of the people are concerned and think that violence is going to occur. So we're now going to do a little test exercise where you don't have to say it aloud, where nobody's going to think about it. But I want to share this with you because it's a good one for you to start to think about. And since you're going to get the recording of this afterwards, to share it with people within your organization. So a test exercise is where you take an exposure and you say, what are the decisions we need to make? What are the actions we need to take? What are the words we need to say if this is coming on? So let me describe some of that and I'll lead you through it. And then later, I would encourage you to take this as a conversation within your organization. So background, Georgia's a swing state. Emotions are running high and hot. We're seeing election tensions. There are groups with special interest in various topics. Clearly, the conflict we've seen is between pro-Palestinian and those who are pro-Israel, or many other hostile examples between the left and right, and it kind of changes and is fluid, as we've seen in the media every day. Several groups have announced their intention to hold a meeting in your town this weekend. It's reported that people are being bussed in from Atlanta and out of state just for this event. Simultaneously, a conservative group is planning a demonstration to show their commitment to their causes. The two groups are anti each other vocally and in some cases violently. What is your focus on the decisions, actions, and words needed? Decisions include, what do we need to have in place? What should we say? What should we do now? How do we let our constituents know that they're doing everything we can to make them safe? The potential is beyond our local police to be able to handle. So if you were doing this as an actual exercises, we would ask you these questions. What do you know? What are you concerned? If so, about what? What's your plan? What are the decisions that you need to make? What are the actions you need to take? What are the words that you need to say? What are you going to monitor? What are you going to track and keep aware of? How are you monitoring that? And who's going to be doing it? So use this as a discussion that you can have that would help start to prepare your area to be ready. Now, what's going to happen in any type of a test exercise, we said, look, they're planning to come this weekend. Now we're going to move the clock forward and say the event's happening now. And the interactions between the groups are occurring and escalating. Media is on site filming the escalations. Pressure is on the city to respond to state and national media requests. Local businesses are afraid of losing business and physical damage. Local citizens are demanding to know what actions are being taken to protect them and get this mess out of town. And it comes back to, what do you know? Are you concerned about? If so, about what? What's your plan? Decisions, actions, and words. What are you going to monitor? How and who? Now, we're not going to take time and do this as a back and forth because we could take an hour or two to do an exercise to run through all of those elements and discuss it. But you could take this fact pattern or create any fact pattern that you want to, and it would be good to think about it before the event instead of waiting until the event and trying to build it on a fly to understand the difference. So generally exercises are used to help an organization grow, to take the planning, the preparation, and training to come back. It's easy to say not talk to the media, but practicing that and how you handle those areas with your three key messages becomes important. So in thinking this over, just looking at the structure that was created here, there's a thread about it coming for the weekend. No, it's now happening. Did it reveal any weaknesses in your organization's planning, readiness, and recovery. What tasks must you complete to improve preparedness, planning, response, or recovery? We want to work before and not after. What are your top 3 priorities? What were the impacts? Now we're talking about loss of revenue, we're talking potentially injuries, loss of life, a variety of different things have happened. We've seen it from the physical aspects of the 2 hurricanes that have just recently come through Florida and Georgia. And if you talk about those elements, those natural disasters created those areas. But we have coming up in November an election. Polls are open now. People are voting now. Numbers are coming in, depending upon whose polling group is looking forward. This one's leading, that one's leading. There's differences there. This is an emotional issue for a large number of people, and there are going to be people that are angry with whatever the outcome comes in. And to look at what's going on in your community is not a waste of time. I think it is a necessity that you start to become aware. So, crisis risk, steeped in risk, forged by crisis. Crisis is defined by a loss of control. So my goal today was to give you some tools, to give you a better understanding of the environment. And by the way, I made a mistake early. I should have thanked you for running for office, serving as an elected official. That's a great personal sacrifice that you and your family have made to make a difference. But you can make a difference associated with that. And I look forward to sharing those things with you. Now, I went to a blank screen. I really wasn't intending to do that, but that's where we are, but we've covered the time. Dan, did I put everybody to sleep? Does anyone have a question?
Does anybody have any questions? I don't see any, Jim. I think you covered everything. Thank you so much for your time. And to Jim's point, thank all those that are elected officials and people that are working in cities and counties. Thank you for your service for the citizens of your particular community. We do appreciate it. With that said, I guess, Jim, unless you have anything else to say, we'll just let them go.
No, I think so. We'll let you go and move through today, and good luck, everyone. May there be peace in the next 2 weeks.
For sure. Thank you, Jim.
Thank
you,
you,
everybody. Guys, have a great day. And if you need anything, please send me an email. Thank you.